Around 50 to 60 million years ago, a species of land-dwelling tetrapod, a mammal, equipped with hooves on its feet, began to slowly move across wetland and coastal environments and transition back into the oceans. This gradual evolutionary trajectory would see this hoofed mammal species transition into the fully aquatic whales by about 35 million years ago. Since then, the whales have gone on to thrive and diversify. We can see the evidence of this terrestrial origin in the bodies of modern whales. They're mammals with all of the requisite features like internal gestation, milk production, being warm-blooded, and everything else. And since the first mammals were terrestrial tetrapods derived from the older reptilian lineage, by definition, all mammal lineages had terrestrial origins, even the modern aquatic ones like walruses, seals, dolphins, and of course, whales. Now, recently, some paleontologists working in Peru have discovered an ancient fossil from this evolutionary lineage. The fossilized individual lived 42.6 million years ago, long after this evolutionary transition back into the oceans had gotten underway, but long before it had ever finalized. This fossil gives us an impressive glimpse into the past, like a freeze frame from the middle of a process that was unfolding over millions of years. The fossil is, essentially, a sample of this great transition in progress. As a species, it's newly discovered, as all the other ancient whale ancestors have all been 10 million years older and found in Asia. This new species is called the Paragocetus pacificus, which means the traveling whale that reached the Pacific, which denotes the fact that it's the first ancient whale ancestor found in the Americas and not in Asia. Alright, so onto the fossil itself. The most obvious thing about the fossil is how strange it is. It really reminds me of some kind of mammalian analog of an alligator. It has a low, extended body around 3 to 4 meters long, with 4 short limbs that end in webbed feet. The fossils include finger bones, wrist bones, a radius, an ulna, and other bones homologous with typical vertebrate tetrapod skeletal anatomy. On the tips of its fingers, or the fossilized remains of some of its fingers, researchers were able to observe small hoof-like structures, no doubt a remnant of the hooves still retained on a few of their terrestrial ungulate cousins. So their hands were both hoofed and webbed. Like I said, this fossil is very strange. Features in its lower spinal bones were similar to that seen in otters and beavers, suggesting a tail that's flattening and widening into a horizontal fin to be used for locomotion in the water. Unfortunately, in this particular fossil, the terminal vertebral bones were not recovered, so we are unable to see exactly what the tail structure looked like, and how close it was in appearance to a modern whale tail. Also included among the preserved bones is a long mandible lined with sharp teeth. This whale ancestor is clearly a carnivorous predator. The short legs, with their webbed, toed feet, suggest that the animal had an amphibious lifestyle. It was able to swim, perhaps for days or even weeks at a time, but it also retained the strength to walk around on dry land. This thing was like a mammal version of an alligator. It had a long body, it had short limbs that carried itself low to the ground. It lived in wetland and coastal environments where it had ready access to the ocean, and it had a long snout lined with sharp teeth that it used to hunt fish and crabs and the occasional terrestrial vertebrate. I think it's kind of crazy, in a really cool way, that the ancestors of the whales were, at one point, some kind of strange, alligator-like mammalian predator. So it kind of sucks that the tailbones were not preserved, because it would have been really cool to see the tail fin at this stage in the evolutionary process. It's also frustrating that, besides the mandible, the rest of the skull was not preserved either. I'd be very curious to see where the nostrils were at this point in the whale's evolution, if they were closer to the front of the head like a terrestrial mammal, or if they were closer to the top of the head, like a modern cetacean. Or if they were somewhere in between, like maybe at this point in the physiological evolution of the cetacean skull, The nostrils were at some point between the eyes. It's entirely possible, but we don't have the skull, so we don't know. These mysteries will only be resolved with future discoveries and in-depth analysis of those fossils. Every finding illuminates the curious story of whale evolution.